Hello, folks. Welcome to the channel. So happy to see you all. Want to talk to you today about something that's close to my mind, and I mean mind or brain, because what I'm going to talk about is a story by Elaine Blackburn. Now, Elaine has said that bottled water is a link to dementia, as human brains contain 1 teaspoonful of plastic. Minute particles of plastic are in everyone's brain. Scientists have sounded the alarm after a study revealed that the human brain contains roughly a spoonful of plastics, the concentration of microplastics and nanoplastics, MNPS, if you want the initials. And it was found to be 3 to 5 times higher in brains of individuals with dementia. I've not got there yet, but you can be a concern when you forget things. You go into a room and you come back out and you think, what did I go in there for? But an article on the brain medicine described the findings as alarming, particularly in relation to patients with dementia. Well, of course it would be. It is also noted that while it is nearly impossible to avoid consuming plastic, there are methods to minimise the risk. It's good to hear, isn't it? Numerous studies in recent years have underscored the escalating risk posed by plastic consumption. This includes the impact of microplastics on the lungs, on fertility, and on inflammations. A study published in Nature magazine discovered that the levels of microplastics in the brain are significantly higher than in other organs, such as the liver and the kidneys. The researchers also observed the participants in their study diagnosed with dementia had up to 10 times more microplastics in their brains compared to those who didn't have dementia. Isn't that bad? 10 times as much. The study concluded that the human brain contains approximately a spoon's worth of microplastics and nanoplastics. The researchers cautioned that these microplastics are smaller in size, less than 200 nanomicrons, and are most commonly polyethylene. That was reported by Surrey Live. Professor Tamara Galloway, a professor of exotoxicology, got it right in the end, at the University of Exeter, commented on the study saying microplastics are ubiquitous consequences of modern life, present in air, water and food, and it should come as no surprise to find that most people have microplastics present in their bodies. What we don't know yet is what the implications are to the human health. Well, I would have thought that this study that's just said that people with dementia have more sugar in their brain, have more plastics in their brain than people who haven't got dementia. I think that's a good sign, don't you? Yeah, I do. Anyway, She also further went on to explain 2 things stand out from this study. The first is that there is no relationship between the age of the subjects and the amount of microplastics present in the brain samples. This is important because it suggests that microplastics do not accumulate continuously in brain tissues as we age. I don't know these things. I'm not an ecotoxicologist. But I would have thought, yes, they do, and disagree with her there, when she's saying it's nothing to do with the age, the thing is, dementia hits people at a later stage. So it's not affecting the younger people, but we are accumulating as we go on, aren't we? And of course, the older people haven't been exposed to so much plastics as the younger people that are coming through, because we didn't. I remember when I was growing up, we didn't have things wrapped in polythene and plastics. We had them in a paper bag, a brown paper bag. we didn't have plastic bottles for milk, and we had a glass bottle which we washed out and gave back to the milkman, who delivered it and collected the empties. So we weren't exposed as much as people are today. They're not taking this into consideration, but at least this lady doesn't seem to be. This Professor Tamara Galloway doesn't seem to be taking it into consideration. Perhaps she is, perhaps she's not. I don't know. I wasn't there, was I? Anyway, what can we say? The exotoxicist, she also noted the second thing to stand out is the increased levels of contamination over time, with a 50% increase in levels of microplastics present in the brain samples collected over the last 8 years, reflecting the increased production and use of plastics over a similar time frame. Well, of course it does. Of course. That's what I've just said, hasn't it, before I read that? This is significant because it suggests that if we were to reduce environmental contamination with microplastics, the levels of human exposure would be decreased. Well, yes, if you don't put it in the air, we're not going to be eating it, are we? If we're not putting the food and in the air and in the water, offering a strong incentive to focus on innovations that reduce exposure. Well, to reduce exposure, we'd have to go back to the 50s and 60s, early 60s, where we had, as I said, glass bottles and paper bags, and not plastic bottles and plastic bags. It's common sense, but common sense left us a number of years back. I remember I was a health and safety consultant to industry, and I remember a judge saying in a health and safety case that I wasn't involved in, but the defendant says, "Well, it's common sense they shouldn't have done that," and the judge says, "There's no such thing as common sense. It's either law or it isn't. It's either safe or it isn't. No such thing as common sense." Okay. I've digressed, but let's get back to this. When it comes to the problem with plastics, it's crucial to understand that plastics don't biodegrade, but instead break down into smaller pieces known as microplastics. These end up being ingested by animals and consequently into the food chain. Why? Because people are throwing their plastic bottles and their plastic bags willy-nilly in the countryside, and then animals eat them. Take them home. Don't leave your rubbish for others to be contaminated by. Makes sense, but not common sense because it doesn't exist. Okay, so microplastics also infiltrate. This is what I've said before, and I don't drink it. Microplastics also infiltrate our bodies through bottled water, and scientific studies found even tea bags have been found to contain these tiny particulates. Why? Because they started making tea bags with plastic. Did you know that? Check your tea bags. Have the paper ones. Or the wooden one. They do it with wood fibre and it's made into the fibre that holds the tea inside that bag. Don't have the plastic ones. Check the box. Force these manufacturers to change their ways, because we don't want a teaspoonful of plastic in our brains. There isn't enough room for mine. My head's full. Do you believe that? Experts writing in Brain Medical. Let me see. I don't want to go and jump. I was jumping the gun and then I thought, should I continue? No, I will continue. Experts writing in Brain Medicine stated, given the widespread presence of microplastics in the environment, completely eliminating exposure is unrealistic. A more practical approach is to reduce the most significant sources of microplastic intakes. Well, again, of course it's more. Reduce it. So what can we do about it? While it's nearly impossible to avoid microplastics entirely, there are measures we can take to minimise the risk. In our water, research published in the journal Environmental Science and Technology identified bottled water as the second largest source of microplastics, with air we breathe being the first. Seafood came third, with the three making the large majority, of microplastic intake. The ships are dropping their plastics into the seas. Excuse me, I've still got this tickly throat. And it's the fish are eating it, and they're swallowing it, and then we eat the fish with the plastics in them, and the plastics then go into our stomachs, and some of it then the blood takes round from our stomachs, round our bodies, and into our brain and our liver and our kidneys. Please, 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 people, stop throwing your rubbish away. Take it home. Dispose of it correctly. Yeah, will we? I doubt it. People think, well, I don't feel ill. Well, you don't until you suddenly find you've got dementia, or you've got kidney stones, or kidney. Oh well. The study researchers believe that switching from bottled water to tap water could decrease microplastic consumption from 90,000 per year to 4,000 per year, while the higher figure applies to those who only drink bottled water, and the lower to those who exclusively only drink tap water. Most people fall somewhere in between. Well, I'm one of those that don't drink bottled water. I don't see why we need to. I think it's a waste of money, and I think it's a waste of resources. And so perhaps that's why I haven't got dementia yet. Tea bags I've mentioned. Examine your tea bags. Some are made of paper, some are made of wood pulp. Those are okay, but stay clear of the plastic ones. The scientists found that steeping one tea bag in 95 degrees centigrade water released 14 billion microplastics into the beverage. One tea bag releases 14 billion microplastics into the beverage. They say tea enthusiasts might want to look into which brands are sticking with paper for their tea bags. Yes, perhaps they might, if they're listening, and if they take note of what they're being told. But is it getting out there? I mean, I'm telling you here, but my readership, my listeners are so few. Tell your folks, please. Tell your folks. How about reheating and storage of food? When it comes to reheating or storing food, the brain medicine team suggests that there are several adjustments that can be made even within the confines of the kitchen. They focus on the levels of BPA, which is a plastics, a chemical commonly found in plastics, which is released when plastics degrade, and reheating it, of course, degrades the plastics. They recommend stopping the practice of heating food in plastic. Could it be one of the most effective ways to reduce microplastic consumption, they ask? Food storage can contribute to microplastic exposure. So again, we're buying food in plastic trays and a polythene cover. It's seeping into the food. Oh, for the days when I used to go to the butcher's and the butcher would cut the meat and he'd put it on a greased paper and then wrap it up. No plastics involved. We were healthier, We were healthier. Okay, they recommend, this is the scientists, the brain medicine team, they recommend stopping the practice of heating food in plastic. Could be one of the most effective ways of reducing microplastic consumption. A randomized crossover trial of canned goods showed that more than 100%, 1000% rise in urinary bisphenol levels after 5 days of daily canned soup intake. This suggests that limiting canned food consumption and opting for non-plastic or BPA-free packaging alternatives can effectively reduce exposure. It has also been, when they say canned, I think they mean plastic containers. I'm I'm sorry about that. I just copied that bit out from a medical journal. It's also said avoiding plastic and opting for glass or stainless steel containers can reduce intake. Glass bottles, we used to have our milk in glass bottles. Steel containers, yes, we cooked in steel. It added heating food in plastic containers, especially in the microwave, can release staggering amounts of microplastics and nanoplastics, up to 4.22 million and 2.11 billion particles per square centimetre in just 3 minutes. 2.11 billion particles in 3 minutes in the microwave. That's when we open the door and we've breathed it straight into our lungs. Even long-term storage at room temperature or in the fridge leads to significant plastic shedding. These plastics show toxic potential within in vitro studies, revealed to up to 77% cell death in human kidney cells after prolonged exposure. 77%, that's up to death in human kidney cells from plastics. When it comes to processed foods, the difference is stark. Highly processed foods, like chicken nuggets, contain 30 times more microplastics per gram than chicken breasts, highlighting the impact of industrial processing, which often uses plastics at some point. That's what the Brain Medicine reported. Chicken nuggets. Who eats chicken nuggets? Our young children. They love chicken nuggets, and now we find out 30 times more microplastics in them. The food industry is killing us. And they know. They know they're doing it. It's profit, profit, profit. Is it possible to clear plastics from our bodies? According to experts in brain medicine, not much is known on how effectively the body can rid itself of microplastics. They don't know how to rid it. Once it's in your brain, how can you get it out? Can we flush it out of our kidneys, out of our liver? Can we cough it out of our lungs? It's doubtful, isn't it? It's doubtful. They may come up with some way in the end, but why are they allowing the food industry to put it into our bodies in the first place? Why is the people throwing their rubbish in fields for the animals to eat? Why are they throwing it in the seas and the oceans so that the fish can eat and then we eat the fish? Greed, laziness, uncaring attitude, because people do not seem to act until it hits them. They don't act. They do not understand. It doesn't hit them until it hits them. It's a frightening fact that there was I think it's Nuremberg. He was a pastor in Germany, and he did the poem where he said they came for the Jews. They came for the Jews. I wasn't a Jew. They came for the trade unionists. I wasn't a trade unionist. They came for the workers. I wasn't a worker. Then they came for me, and there was no one to care. The story is one of despair. It's one of, why don't we care at the time we should be caring? And I think our brains have been trained to act that way in our schools. Our schools taught us, listen to the teacher, do not question, do not question. I was doing a psychology degree in a university in Birmingham, and the professor, I won't name him, but he's probably dead now, but the professor he was a creep and he walked around, and I was talking to, and a young girl, she said, could you sit by me because he keeps coming round and he puts his hand on my shoulders and he seems, so I said, okay. So he's saying something and I didn't agree, and I turned to the girl and said, what a load of rubbish, quietly, and didn't realise he'd come round and he was behind me and he said, oh yes, okay, tell us why it's rubbish. And I said, really? And he said, yes. So I started speaking and he said, no, stand up. So I stood up. He said, no, go up front. And he sat next to this poor girl. And I did my talk on why it was rubbish and what the alternative was. And at the end, he went to the front and got me to sit down again. And he says, I cannot disagree with your assumptions. He says, I can't disagree with them at all. You seem to be correct. He said, however, I've never been to work. He said, I came straight out of university and became a lecturer. He said, now I'm a professor. He said, and I've taught this all these years. He says, and now you've just confused my mind. He said, so I'm going to continue teaching it the way I know. He says, and he said, you have a problem because I'm the one who sets the exam. And that question's in it. So you need to remember what I've said, even if you don't agree. I'm going to carry on teaching it the way I taught it. He couldn't accept. He'd said I was right, but he was going to continue. That's how people are. They continue even when they know and they face problems. So I've rambled on too much, haven't I? So, okay, I'll end it there. Be good, be safe, and goodbye from DJ. Bye for now.